One issue we see quite often here at Replay is people bringing their bikes in for repair because the gears are slipping. Now, this can be caused by a number of different factors, like in this particular case, the rear derailleur is not lined up properly with the rear sprocket, and it's causing the chain to jump back and forth between the two gears. And in a lot of cases, you can just simply adjust that problem out by adjusting the stops on the derailleur so that the chain rests in the proper position. Although in this particular case, as we look at this, you can see that the rear derailleur is actually bent inwards, so that the hanger that the derailleur hangs off of, it looks like the derailleur got hit and it bent the hanger in so that the derailleur is not sitting properly. In fact, you can see the derailleur is kind of cocked inward a little bit, where it should normally be almost parallel with the gears on the rear derailleur. So in some cases, you can bend the hanger back out. If it's a case like this where the hanger is a separate piece, there are some bikes where the hanger is built into the frame, and there are some where the hanger is a separate replaceable unit. They're designed to break. The idea is that if this gets smashed, rather than your frame getting destroyed, this simple hanger will just simply need to be replaced. So they're really designed to be replaceable, and I've seen probably 50% of the time, if you try to bend one of these back out, they'll just snap off and you have to replace it. It would be great if this was just a standard thing, but one thing on bicycles that they have not standardized are derailleur hangers. There's about 200 variants of these, and they are specific for particular bikes, and they can even vary from one model year to the next. So if this is an issue that you're seeing, best thing to do is bring your bike in so that we can match it up to the proper hanger. And if you have the parts, if it has broken, bring all the parts so that we can match it up with the catalog to make sure that it is the right replacement. Now, something else that does also cause this sort of problem with the chain slipping on the gears is the chain begins to get stretched out. After so many years, or if you're just an avid rider that's putting a lot of mileage on it, the chain begins to stretch out as you use it more and more, and it no longer sits properly on the gears on your rear sprocket. And it's really hard to tell just by looking at it whether or not the chain has been stretched out. So we actually do have a tool. It's a chain checker. It's got two little pins that fit into the chain, and then you can see if the chain needs replacing. And this one, in this case, is very stretched out. Normally, you'd only be able to move it about halfway. You can see this one moves all the way. So this chain is fully stretched out. And it's, if you want to get one of these things, this is the Park Tool CC2. It even gives you the different settings on it. So that if it's a 5 to 10 speed, if it runs up to 0.75, which you can look through the little window and you can see the size. If it's worn up to that, then it's time to replace it. If it's an 11 to 12 speed, then 0.5 is considered to be worn. So that's one thing to be aware of if you're having trouble with, especially in the higher gears. Now, lower gears, because the chain is sitting on all of these teeth, it doesn't tend to jump as easily, where on the higher gears, there's very few teeth on there, so it's very easy for the chain to pop off and slip and give you that kind of chain slipping or gear slipping effect. So you're normally going to see it on the upper gears of these. So the first thing to do is generally to replace the chain if that's an issue. The other issue is to actually look at the sprockets on the rear of them. And there are two different kinds of sprockets when you're dealing with the rear wheel of the bicycle. So the rear sprocket system in most multi-speed bikes generally fall into two categories. Either they are the freewheel or they are the cassette. Either way, either one of these, in order to remove them from the bike, you need to have special tools. As far as the freewheel goes, you need to have a special spline tool that fits into the inside of the freewheel, and then you need a wrench in order to loosen it. This one I pre-loosened. It usually takes a bit of torque to get these things off, and then you can just simply spin the freewheel off and it just lifts out. You can see the outer hub that it mounts onto is threaded, so it just fits onto there. In the other case, we have the cassette. Now the cassette needs an entirely different set of tools in order to remove it from the bike. It needs to have basically a spanner and a chain tool. So this simply fits onto the gears, and then you have your spanner that fits into here, and then you can loosen, there's like an inner nut here that holds it on. Just simply rotate that out. And then your cassette slides off of it. So in the case of freewheels, it's got the little freewheel ratchet type thing built into it, where in the cassettes, it's built into the wheel, not into the sprockets. The upside of the cassettes is that you can change individual chain rings or sprockets, depending on what terminology you like to use. And these can get worn out as well. A lot of times you need to take a look at, especially the high gears on it, where we can see this is a brand new high gear. This is a used one. As the gear gets worn down, it gets narrower and narrower until it gets to be somewhat like this, where you can see it's narrower than the original sprocket, and there's less for the chain to grab onto. The good news about these is that you can just simply replace the worn out sprockets on it and save the rest of it, where if you're dealing with a freewheel, if you have a worn out high gear, you pretty much have to replace the entire thing. In a lot of cases where you're dealing with a worn out chain, and you're going to replace the chain anyway, it might be worthwhile to consider replacing the sprockets as well, because putting a brand new chain on a worn sprocket may not work very well, and it may prematurely wear out the chain. So if you have the extra few bucks to replace both the sprocket and the chain, it might be the best case scenario. Although, you know, if you have limited funds, then just replacing the chain should be adequate for most people. So something to consider if your bike chain is slipping. Obviously, you need to have some specialized tools in order to diagnose some of this stuff. So you can look at it on your own, or you can order these tools on your own if you find that you're in situations where you need to diagnose these things. Otherwise, best bet, bring the bike in. We'll be glad to take a look at it and show you exactly what's going on with the chain and the sprocket and so on. And hopefully maybe it's just something where we can just adjust the derailleur and get it up and running again, or worst case scenario, you might have to replace your chain, which is, you know, $20, $30 for most basic bikes. If you're getting into more expensive O-ring chains, it definitely gets more expensive, but, you know, that's something that we could work out and give you some options on. So bring your bike in, we'll take a look at it and go from there. Until then, don't let the bastards get you down.